Some stories remain suspended in time, like threads of light that no one can truly break. Stories that cross generations and continue to burn beneath the ashes of years, as if waiting for a precise moment to make themselves heard again. Garabandal is one of these stories. It is a luminous wound that has never closed, and that today returns to pulse, more alive than ever, thanks to a voice that had chosen to remain hidden. A voice that knows the weight of mystery, the delicacy of the sacred, the echo of what does not belong only to the earth. A voice that, after 60 years, finally decides to speak again. Jacinta. To understand the impact of this return, one must imagine what it means to keep within oneself words that do not age, memories that do not fade, visions that refuse to dissolve with time. It is like carrying in one's heart a fragment of heaven and knowing that this fragment is not yours, that it has been entrusted to you, and that sooner or later you must return it to the world. This is how Jacinta lived, one of the 4 visionaries of a small village in the mountains of Cantabria. A simple place where God decided to burst forth with something that still today appears incomprehensible, overwhelming, immensely current. Garabandal is not a closed chapter. It is not a relic of the past. It is an underground river that continues to flow and that occasionally resurfaces with a force that surprises even those who thought they had filed away those events as a distant phenomenon. Jacinta's silence was part of this mystery. A silence that was not flight, not oblivion, not fear. It was waiting. It was discernment. It was the humble awareness of one who knows that she is not the protagonist, but a message greater, higher, more urgent, that surpasses every human voice. Today, 60 years later, that silence is broken. It opens like a door that does not creak but breathes. And what emerges is not a simple memory, not nostalgia, not a return to the past. It is something that speaks to the present, that touches our time with surprising precision. It is as if Jacinta carries with her a key that has remained hidden too long and finally decides to place it on the table, before the world, letting everyone perceive its weight, its value, its gravity. In this video, we will enter with slow but determined steps into this return. We will discover why her testimony has a different flavor today, why her speaking after 60 years is not a detail but a sign, why what she reveals does not belong only to the past but flows into the future that awaits us. Prepare to enter a territory where heaven touches the earth and where every word possesses a force that is not measured by time but by eternity. Jacinta has spoken, and nothing will ever be the same again. The first element that today takes on a completely new meaning concerns the perception of time with which the visionaries spoke of future events. For decades, Jacinta's words seemed to belong to a distant tomorrow, an almost unreal tomorrow, suspended in the margin between prophecy and possibility. Today, that tomorrow has become our present. This is what makes her testimony suddenly current, as if an invisible line that separated yesterday from today had been broken. It is not about discovering a phrase never spoken, but about recognizing that what seemed distant now appears one step away from us. Jacinta, in her accounts, spoke of a time when the world would experience profound confusion, a loss of spiritual meaning, and a weakening of faith that would touch even the most sacred places. At the time, those words could seem exaggerated, abstract, almost impossible to imagine in a world that, despite its difficulties, still had a clear connection with tradition and faith. No one could fully intuit the scope of that announced disorientation. Today, however, it is enough to look around to understand that that description coincides perfectly with what we are living. The new, therefore, is not the content itself, but its correspondence with reality. What was then perceived as distant is today recognized as familiar. It is as if a veil had fallen, and suddenly what was enigmatic became evident. Jacinta spoke of a world shaken by unexpected events, of a humanity that would lose the ability to distinguish truth from lies, and that would struggle to find stable reference points. 60 years ago, this scenario seemed almost symbolic. Today, it reflects the anxieties of a society living between instability, bewilderment, and moral fragility. Another aspect that takes on new value concerns the connection between spiritual events and global changes. The visionaries alluded to a period in which invisible forces would act with unprecedented intensity, influencing the choices of entire peoples. Today, this is reflected in the widespread perception that something profound is crossing the world, something that concerns not only politics or society, but a broader, more intimate, almost silent transformation that touches consciences and challenges the soul. Jacinta's message thus appears as a map that finally begins to coincide with the territory. The novelty, therefore, emerges from the comparison between prophecy and contemporaneity. Today's world illuminates yesterday's words with surprising precision. Jacinta had spoken of a strong and sudden clarification that would come to shake everyone, a clarification that would precede a decisive moment for humanity. At the time, it seemed a remote idea. Today, her voice takes on a different echo, more intense, heavier, as if that time she could then glimpse is approaching. This is only the first piece, and what it reveals is already enough to understand why her broken silence has a value that surpasses simple memory. It is a sign that speaks to our present with a force that no one can ignore any longer. The detail that Jacinta had never shared before concerns a precise instant experience during one of the ecstasies, a fragment that she had chosen to hold in the deepest part of her heart because it was too delicate and too laden with meaning. An instant that for 60 years no one had known, not even those who had been closest to her. In her silence, she guarded an image that did not belong to the time or space of the village, an image that had impressed itself upon her like a spiritual mark. During one of the apparitions, while everything around seemed suspended in a motionless light, Jacinta said she saw something that did not concern the past or the present, but a remote point of the future. It was not a complete scene, not a prophecy formulated in words. It was a symbol, a mysterious sign that the Virgin had shown her without instructions, as if it should be understood only when the moment arrived. For 60 years, she had kept silent about that detail because she did not yet possess the key to interpret it. Today, however, she says that finally that sign finds resonance in the world, as if reality itself had taken the necessary step for that fragment to emerge. The image was simple and at the same time disturbing, a flame that did not burn and a shadow that did not darken. The two forms, opposite in nature, did not fight each other. They remained side by side, as if waiting for a higher order to separate. The flame was alive, silent, motionless. The shadow was still, dense, almost compact, as if it contained something that wanted to come out but could not yet. The Virgin did not explain the meaning. She did not say whether that sign concerned future events, humanity, the church, or something deeper. She left her only the vision, like a seal that would speak for itself when the time was ripe. This is why Jacinta had preferred to remain silent. She did not want that fragment to be misinterpreted, aggravated by fears or superficial curiosity. Now, after 60 years, she decides to reveal it not as a concluded prophecy, but as an invitation to interior vigilance. She says she recognizes in this era the same tension she saw in that flame and in that shadow, two realities destined to reveal their nature only when humanity has crossed a threshold that still today seems invisible. It is not a secret in the classic sense. It is a symbol silenced too long. It is a fragment that opens a door. It is that type of detail that does not change history, but changes the way one looks at history. And for Jacinta, this was the right moment to finally let it emerge from silence. The second detail that Jacinta has decided to share after 60 years concerns a sound, not a vision. A sound that had crossed her spirit in such a singular way as to convince her that it could not be understood before the appointed time. During one of the ecstasies, while her body was motionless and the surrounding world seemed to have stopped, Jacinta heard something that came neither from heaven nor from earth, but from a space she describes as an intermediate layer, a place suspended between light and matter. For her entire life, she had avoided speaking of it because that sound resembled nothing human. It was not a voice, not a song, not a noise. It was a beat. Not a heartbeat, but something deeper, slower, more ancient, as if it belonged to an immense and invisible organism. Jacinta recounts that the vibrations of that beat did not pass through her ears, but through her bones, like a call that did not want to be interpreted, but only welcomed. The beat repeated 3 times. The first was faint, almost imperceptible, like a whisper. The second was more intense, as if it came from an infinite depth. The third was the longest, but it was not a warning or a threat. It was an announcement that was not expressed in words, but in rhythm. And it was precisely this that left Jacinta in a silence lasting decades. She was unable to understand whether that rhythm belonged to heaven, to earth, or to what was to happen in the future. Over the years, she had tried to forget it, to consider it a suggestion, a marginal detail. Yet that beat resurfaced at the most unusual moments, like an echo that did not want to disappear. This is why she guarded it without speaking of it to anyone. She says she understood only today the reason for her silence. That beat corresponds to the global sensation that crosses the world, something that vibrates beneath the surface of normality, as if all humanity were waiting for a change it still cannot name. The sound is not a message, but a threshold. It is as if time itself were anticipating something, and that beat were its prelude, a sort of cosmic tremor that manifests before a great passage. Jacinta has decided to reveal it now because she feels that the rhythm of the world, the real one, the one that is not seen, has begun to resemble that mysterious beat she heard as a child in Garabandal. And so, after 60 years, that hidden sound emerges as a new piece, a note not yet deciphered, a fragment that adds depth to the mystery, a detail that does not want to frighten but to orient, a signal that something is changing, and that this change has already begun to make itself felt.